Welcome to the Caption Life, and in this episode, we are going to be reviewing the latest film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and we have guest host Richard Nebens of The Direct joining us. He and I also talk about how neither one of us know what diegetic means, how we're really excited about the Deadpool 3 movie that's going to be coming out. It's probably one of our most anticipated MCU films, and we also talk about how Groot's fighting style should be called Groot-jitsu. Hi, and welcome to The Caption Life, a show for the most casual and dedicated fans of comics and a member of the Comic Watch family. I'm your host, Sean. Join me and discover what the world of comics and graphic novels have to offer. From one-on-one interviews with industry professionals, roundtable discussions with passionate fans, and reviews on the latest comics, TV shows, and movies. Now let's dive right on in. Welcome back to the show, and we are reviewing Marvel Studios' latest film from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This has been a hotly anticipated movie with all the hype and ominous messaging around the film, and it being James Gunn's last film for Marvel Studios for the foreseeable future, since he is now the co-chair of DC Studios. Joining me today to discuss this movie is editor and critic Richard Nebens. Richard is the senior writer and assistant editor for TheDirect.com, where he has worked since early 2020. He specializes in the MCU and all things Marvel, but he also has a beat on Star Wars, the DC Universe, and the movie world as a whole. On top of his passion for sports and music, Richard is an evolving fan of movies and TV shows, taking in new content regularly while sharing news on the best and latest from Hollywood and the entire industry. And this is also his second appearance on the Caption Live show. He was a guest earlier last year when we talked about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Richard, welcome back on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Sean. I appreciate it. It's always great to see you again. And man, I am looking forward to talking about this movie.
I know. And I really enjoyed talking about Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness with you last year. So I'm sure that this episode is going to be the same. And I just want to point out, we talked about this a little bit, but the last time you were on the show, I think your beard wasn't as thick as how it is now. And I absolutely love it. Like, I really do. It's a really nice full beard. Not a lot of people can pull that off. And I really love your beard. I'm really jealous of it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think it's just come from probably not shaving it off at all since I think when I went to go see Ant-Man, if I'm not mistaken.
No kidding.
This is a good solid. I can't remember if I've trimmed it or not, but this I think is a solid like 3 months worth.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I love it. It's just, I mean, again, not everybody. For people who don't know, like I've been shaving my head since I was 19. I feel like when it comes to facial and head hair, stuff like that, not everybody can pull off like a good beard. Not everybody can pull off having a shaved head and stuff like that. And you are definitely pulling off very well. And I think you could just not shave for another 3 months and it'll still look really good.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I don't know if I can pull off the shaved head. I'll have to see about that when it comes more naturally. But yeah, I know you pull it off, and I've seen your Kingpin cosplay.
Yes.
So you make it work.
Thank you. Yeah, I had to start shaving it when I was 19 out of necessity, because I started losing my hair when I was about 14, 15 is when my hairline started receding. And so when I got to college, a lot of people like mistaken me for either a professor or a non-traditional student, because they just thought I was in my 30s. So I was like, I got to stop doing this. I got to do something. And at the time, like, I saw a couple people had shaved their heads. It wasn't like a trend like how it is now. Like, there's a lot of guys out there with shaved heads. I feel like I started shaving my heads before it became a thing. But I knew there's a couple of guys I know that shaved their heads. I was like, oh, let me go ahead and do that. And I shaved my head, and I feel like I was like more my age. So for me at the time, it was more of necessity. Now it's like, I can't just grow it back out, because one, I definitely lost all of it on top of my head. But two, my wife and my son has never seen me with hair. So I feel like if I try to go it out, it'll be really weird for them. So yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So how's everything going for you, man? Last time I talked to you, I know you were writing for The Direct, but I think since then, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have been promoted to senior editor, and I don't think you were at editor status last year. Is that right? Or am I misunderstanding that?
Sorta. Yeah. So I was an editor, but now I'm the senior writer at the site,
That's right. Okay.
which is a very, very cool promotion that I got. I love those guys, and I've been working with them for over 3 years now, and it's been a literal godsend. It's been the best job I've ever had in my life. And so, yeah, I'm the senior writer at the site. I'm an assistant editor, and I also post social media stuff for us too. And I'm an occasional guest every once in a while on the Direct podcast, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, just reached 250,000 downloads for
Oh,
those
wow.
guys.
That's awesome.
Absolutely insane. They've been doing that since like October of 2020, and it's been an incredible journey seeing them rise with the podcast. It's David Thompson and Matt Remke doing their thing over there, and I'm on there every once in a while. And
Yeah.
it's an absolute blast. I mean, the Direct is a great place to be.
Yeah. And I think I followed Matt Remke on Twitter, and I really enjoy his stuff. Yeah. Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I know you guys have a really good following on social media too. I think one of your accounts have over 1 million followers, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
For the go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Our MCU Direct page has like 1.3 million followers. So
Oh, wow.
it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, and for those who don't know, do you want to kind of give a plug-in on what the Direct is all about and what it is exactly?
Yeah, absolutely. So how we started off, actually, how the guys who ran it started off, they were just, I think, a fan page for a long time, a few years ago, while the guys who were running it were in college. And since then, we've grown into like an actual news and writing site. We hired on a bunch of writers in March of 2020. Ironically, right before everything shut down with COVID and everything.
Right.
And we started off with just Marvel and Star Wars as our kind of main bread and butter. And we've been steadily growing since then. We've gone to DC and video games since then. And now we're actually covering a lot more of like general movies and stuff. Like I've written a bunch on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny recently. We've been covering a lot of Little Mermaid stuff. I just wrote a big feature on all the characters for Mission Impossible 7, which was a lot of fun. And we've just been slowly building our brand and getting different premieres and interview opportunities and stuff. And it's been a really fun ride with those guys, and building from the ground up, and kind of getting up there with the big names in this industry. So it's been really cool.
That's awesome. And I have to share that the Direct is one of my favorite sites out there for a number of reasons. One, the stuff that you guys write about is just phenomenal and is really well done, and I really appreciate it. But the thing that I appreciate the direct.com the most is how cognizant you all are about when you post things on social media with the articles that you write, that you make it clear that is this like a rumor, or is this, breaking news or something like that? Because I'm not going to say names or anything, but there are sites out there that are very clickbaity. But I feel like the Direct, you guys make it clear, like, hey, before you read this, know like kind of the context of, we're just reporting something that's a rumor, or we're reporting something that just came in, or something like that. And not a lot of sites do that, and I really appreciate that. And that's one of the reasons why I became a big fan of the Direct, is because I feel like that is something that a lot of fans really need to have and really appreciate, because I get really, I'll be honest, pissed off when I click on something and I'm just like, this is a clickbait. I'm just like, I remember one time I was reading something, and I think I almost like threw my phone across the room because I was like so upset with something. But you guys never do that, and you always make it clear with the article like what this is, and I never feel like any of this stuff is clickbait because of that. So I can't say enough great things about the Direct, and your work is always great as well too, which is one of the reasons why I wanted you to come back on the show, because I really enjoy all your stuff that you put out there.
Thank you so much. No, and that's one of our biggest things, is we really try hard to not be one of those clickbaity sites, and we always want to make sure that we're giving the most accurate and up-to-date info to everybody who reads our stuff on the site. And that's one of the things I like so much about working there, is that we do try to be honest and to the point. And if something's a rumor, we're going to say that it's a rumor, and we're not going to we're not going to BS you,
right?
If I may say so. And that's what I really like about the site, and it's a great group of people there that we all try to we all have the same goal in mind, and we all love what we do, and it's a great team.
Yeah, I definitely could tell that from all the interactions and everything that you guys have with each other. And it's like I say, if you haven't checked out the direct.com, I'll make sure to put it out in the show notes as well too, so that way you can just click on it directly there. But yeah, it's a lot of the fandoms that you guys cover are probably a lot of fandoms that the listeners will really enjoy as well too. And so it's definitely a great site to check out. So I definitely encourage you to do that. And your bio, you also said that you are a lover of sports as well too. Correct if I'm wrong, but have you been following the Stanley Cup as well?
A little bit.
Okay.
I've been trying to cover the Stanley Cup. I am shocked that I am still able to follow the. I've been a diehard suffering Lakers fan for the last 2 years. We won the title in 2020, COVID, whatever, we got it done. And this year, I didn't even think we were going to make the playoffs. And now we are in the second round against the defending champs. And we got, as of the recording of this podcast, we have a 2-1 lead over the Golden State Warriors. So I'm actually pretty darn happy with where we're at. LeBron, AD, D'Angelo Russell are getting it done. So, fingers crossed we can make a good run.
Yeah. I'm assuming. So what's funny is you sent me a DM earlier. I think it's something sports related. Yeah. And I was just like, is this for me? Because I'm pretty sure it's not.
That was really funny. Yeah, no. We have this whole like group chat with all the sports fans at the Direct, and like because all of us are a bunch of different sports teams from all over the country.
Yeah,
and we're like always talking to each other when all these big games come up. Like the playoffs and the Super Bowl and everything. Mm-hmm. So no, we have so much fun with it. I'm the only one that's like an LA, California guy. So that's kind of cool for me, but we've got people who root for so many different teams all over the country.
I bet. Now, do you live in LA, or for some reason I thought you lived on the East Coast?
So I've kind of been all over. I went to college in Boston, grew up in SoCal, and currently I'm in Oregon with my wife. So
no kidding.
Yeah, so I've kind of been all over the place, but I've stuck with my Southern California teams and everything.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. For some reason, I thought you were on the East Coast, but no, that's good. Well, in that case, I know it's 3 hours early for you when we're recording, so I appreciate you giving up your evening to hang out with me to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
and can I just say, I don't think there's anything I want to talk about more than this movie right now. I'm so glad that you and me got on for this podcast, because I've been dying to talk about it with somebody like, outside of my wife and my Direct team. What a movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I agree. And it seems like that's been all the buzz over the weekend. I know there's a lot of stuff that happened over the weekend, like, Free Comic Book Day. For me, I went to Indiana Comic Con. So like this whole weekend was like really busy for me for a number of reasons for that. But Guardians of the Galaxy coming out this weekend, which again, Marvel always seems to have a movie that comes out the first weekend of May, which happens to coincide with Free Comic Book Day. So I don't know if there's something there with that or not, but I've seen nothing but Guardians of the Galaxy reviews and comments, stuff like that, and nothing but good things. So before we jump in, just kind of want to let people know that with all of our episodes where we do a movie or TV show review, we also talk about spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, definitely, feel free to pause this episode, bookmark it if you want, but make sure you watch it before you listen to this. Or if you don't mind spoilers, just know going into this that we will be talking about major events that happens in the movie, and there will be spoilers in this episode. So jumping right into it, I want to share what some of the listeners of the show have shared about their thoughts of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 before Richard and I start going into our thoughts. And so starting from Comic Watch, we have one of our reviewers, Anthony Bergamini, said, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 has the same excellent inclusion of thematically relevant diegetic and non-diegetic music as the first two. Gunn killed it with this trilogy, and I effing love this movie. He didn't say effing. I put that in there, but this is a PG-13 show, so I had to adjust it a little bit. I gotta say, he said diegetic. I'll be honest, I don't think I've heard that name before. I'm sorry, I heard that. Yeah, I heard that term before. But Anthony actually has a background in film studies, if I remember correctly. So he knows his stuff when it comes to movies and everything. So I'm sure this is probably, he's referring more to music and all that. But I'm going to have to look up that word and figure out what that means, and then probably agree with him, because I'm sure we all probably agree with a lot of stuff here. From our Discord server, the Illuminate Casters, Joe Loves Comics said, I loved it, but I have a lot of scattered thoughts on it I need to bring together for when I record my own podcast episode on it later. And then on Twitter, at Rogazga said Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was surprisingly emotional. We've seen these characters since the first one and throughout the other MCU films. This one gets you in the feels for sure. I was surprised at the gut punch. And then last but not least, a friend of the show, ODPH podcast, Ken, said it was a perfect send-off for Gunn and the universe he introduced to pop culture. So all these comments, I absolutely agree with 100%. Let's start with our overall thoughts of the movie. Richard, what did you think about Guardians of the Galaxy? I know what you think, but share with with the listeners what you think about this movie.
I mean, this is one of my 3 favorite MCU movies ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like legit. I mean, I knew this was going to be good because James Gunn has done a fantastic job with everything he's done in the MCU. The 2 Guardians movies, the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, which was awesome on Disney Plus. If you haven't seen it, go check that out.
Mm-hmm.
But this is, to me, not only his best movie. I mean, of the ones that I've seen all the ones from the MCU and obviously the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker from DC. This was absolutely an incredible movie. Literally, my list for like top MCU movies goes No Way Home, Infinity War, and then this.
No kidding.
It absolute 10 out of 10 for me. I really don't know how it could have been better. And it's so funny because I was trying to think in my head after I saw it the other day, like, what did he do wrong in this movie? Why am I trying so hard not to put it near the top of my list? And I couldn't find any reason not to do it. It was amazing.
Yeah. You know, and it's funny that you say that because I know a lot of people have the same feelings. You know, obviously Ken from the ODPH podcast said the same thing. And I know I talked to some of my other, you know, close friends and people in some of the comics and podcasting circles I'm in have all said, you know, the same thing. I went and saw the movie with my son and my wife. And of course, my son loved it. He wanted to watch it again. And so we're probably going to watch it again soon once we get some free time. My wife really enjoyed it, but she also says that it's not her favorite one, mostly because she wanted to see Gamora and Peter back together. She very much is in it for the romance, right? Like she loves the romance. She loves the relationships and stuff like that. So she was bummed out that, you know, that didn't really happen, even though it kind of set up for a possibility in the future. You know, she wasn't thrilled with that. Me personally, I'm on board the same way as you. It's one of the best MCU films that has been created, you know, from any of the phases. I think, you know, this story just packs in a lot of punch from a lot of different angles, from, you know, the emotional side, the action, the comedy, the really interesting story. And, you know, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but just the longevity of the planning. You know, we talk about how Kevin Feige plans long term with these phases and starts integrating all these things from previous movies into, you know, the final Avengers movies and stuff like that. James Gunn definitely does that with all the movies that he had created and the holiday special, which I'm going to talk about that as well too. I don't know if you're going to, but if you haven't seen the movie yet, or if you have seen the movie and haven't seen the holiday special, I would encourage you to watch the holiday special because there's actually a lot from that's in this movie, a lot more than I was expecting.
Me too.
But yeah, there was just a lot of heart to it. The marking around it was really interesting because we all thought that somebody was going to die, right? And James Gunn definitely wrote this movie to keep you on the edge of your seat, to think that somebody might be dying in this next scene. And, you know, lo and behold, didn't. But like every time, like, you know, someone got like extremely injured, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the death scene. Like I'm waiting for it. Right. And so this whole thing just seemed like it was geniusly planned from James Gunn, and that the acting from everybody involved, you know, from the main characters to the minor characters to the different cameo appearances and the voice actors and stuff like that, to everybody just involved. It seemed like, from everything I've heard, this was just a well done movie that everybody involved was just so happy with it, and it seemed to pan out so well. And it was a great moment in storytelling, not just by the movie itself, but in terms of a culmination of an entire trilogy plus the holiday special of this team that we're probably not going to see the team in the near future. We might see them. I still convinced that, in 20 years from now, they're going to do we're going to bring all the original people back and to do like a special movie,
Yeah.
Wastelanders or something like that. So I'm sure they'll probably do that in like 20 years or something. But for the foreseeable future, this is the last of this team that we're going to see all together for a number of reasons. But I think this was just a great movie overall from all those aspects, from just a film in the MCU for phase 5 to this being the ending trilogy movie for the series and just everything involved. I agree wholeheartedly that this was just an incredible film. What is something I want to kind of open up to you, Richard, like something from the movie that you really want to talk about? Because again, like you and I have been talking about, like, we're really excited about, just talking this movie with each other and all that. I know I have a list of things I love to talk about, but I figured I started with you first and ask you, what was a moment from this movie that you are desperately want to talk about right now?
Well, one thing that it's kind of actually like an overall thing about the movie, but there's a couple specific moments. This was James Gunn's best use of an awesome mix in relation to like putting it in the movie that he's done with any of the Guardians movies yet. Because like I'm a music guy is one of my biggest things. I graduated from music school and contemporary music school too.
Yeah.
So, music's been a big part of my life for a long, long time. And especially this kind of stuff, 70s, 80s, and, growing in the 90s and 2000s. And I thought what James Gunn did with this soundtrack, when the soundtrack first came out, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it, because there were songs on there that I love, but then there was a lot of stuff that I wasn't sure like how it was going to fit into the movie. And I thought honestly that there was going to be more new stuff like 90s, 2000s and after.
Right.
Just because of the Zune and everything that Quill got at the end of volume 2. But the way he used it in this movie was so perfect. And that's one of the things that elevated it for me above the first two, like the opening with like Radiohead Creep playing when Rocket's walking through nowhere. And that's an emotional as hell scene too. Like when he's talking to Quill, I did not think Peter was going to be wasted out of his mind, like over the whole Gamora thing.
Right.
When Rocket went to him. And I mean, that was some real stuff that like him and Rocket were talking about. And then one of my favorite things too was the Earth, Wind, and Fire Reasons scene when they're taking down the what's it called, the Orgo Core base. Oh my god, that scene in itself was great, but Reasons by Earth, Wind, and Fire playing in the background just made it so much better.
Right.
And then the last song I want to mention obviously is the one that everybody has been. Days Are Over by Florence and the Machines. And that ending scene with everybody going their separate ways and Nowhere celebrating after they beat the High Evolutionary and everybody survives. That was just, it could not have been any better. And I mean, those are the 3 highlights for the songs for me, but the whole soundtrack was great, and especially how Gunn worked it into the plot itself and worked each song in with what was happening in the moment. And I just love that.
Yeah. And it's looking back on the entire trilogy of any of the moments that Guardians of the Galaxy has showed up, James Gunn really leaned into it and made it work really well. There have been movies that have used music very well to kind of help tell with the narration and everything, but I feel like he really capitalized on the fact that Peter Quill in the Guardians of the Galaxy comics, which I haven't read a whole lot, but part of his personality is how much he loves music and listening to it and everything. And so James Gunn like really capitalizing that, not just utilizing it, but think about how this plays into the narrative and the storytelling of it. From a production, from a cinematography kind of view, or director kind of view, not cinematography necessarily, but director kind of view to how it's going to tell the story as he's listening to music or as it's playing, while they're having dialogue and stuff like that. He really utilized that. And I think that a lot of people agree that it enhances the story that much more. And that I think it's kind of dualistic, where you really couldn't pull that off with another team or property in Marvel the same way the Guardians of the Galaxy did. And if you took the music part out from that storytelling, it wouldn't be the same level of movie and quality that we got from James Gunn and the cast as well too. And so it really goes hand in hand, because a lot of times music and soundtrack is more of a kind of like a little bit of an enhancement, but this was definitely critical to the storytelling aspect of it, and that it enhances it, but it's also just kind of, he interwove it into the whole narrative of what's happening in the story, and it really builds on to that. For example, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, when it ends with Yondu's funeral and then playing father and son, because that whole movie was about, a relationship with a father, like that really hits home. Like you could play a lot of different kinds of songs and even songs about, fatherhood and all that, but that just worked really well from the storytelling perspective, because it wasn't just playing the background, but they were playing it through the I think that was a Zoom player and all that. So yeah, I agree that all the music in this and all the movies, was just a critical piece of storytelling. It just elevated that much more.
Yeah, absolutely. What's funny is I didn't think anything would be able to rival Mr. Blue Sky from the intro to Guardians 2 with Baby Groot dancing as they're fighting the giant obelisk thing. This came close for completely different reasons. I mean, the first one was just hilarious and fun and just pure joy. And this one, like I don't know how much you cry during movies or anything. I mean, firstly, I was in tears during the opening intro. When all the Guardians were there. I mean, similarly to how they did with like Stan Lee after he passed away and Chadwick Boseman after he passed away. But this one for a completely different reason, just because this is the last time we have this version of the Guardians. And then when that song with Rocket was,
playing,
and especially after seeing his backstory and all, which we got to get into,
right,
just dropped your heart, right from the opening get-go.
Yeah, I agree. And since you brought this up about, the opening with Volume 2, I got to say that my personal relationship with Guardians of the Galaxy is, like many people, I've never heard of them until the movie came out. And so I was kind of curious. One, I was kind of excited because that was, one of the only properties that came out from the MCU that I was not familiar with. So it's like I can go in with a fresh mind and not being jaded, but just having some preconceived notion about how characters should be from the comics and everything. Exactly. Yeah. And so going in with no expectations. But I gotta say, the opening with Peter Quill dancing, and then that scene where he's, kind of leaning over, then you see the huge Guardians of the Galaxy logo show up on the screen. I don't know what it was about that, but when I saw that in theaters, it gave me chills. Like, it was just so phenomenal how that looked and how that came on to the screen and into the story, that I think at that point I was just like, this is already going to be a great movie just because of that. And it's like, it just never went downhill from there. And so it just, the whole trilogy by itself, this is one of those things where I never thought that I would care about a group of people or a set of characters that were, B-list in the comics at that time, that it just became one of the most powerful and emotional, one of the more critical teams and set of characters in the MCU, that a lot of people just end up enjoying a lot more than some of the other ones that we thought, would be a lot more popular. But this one, because there's so much that people can see themselves in, because it's a smaller team, but also all the relationship building and everything like that. I just think that, this speaks volumes about James Gunn being really the only person that can pull that sort of thing off. And we've seen that in some of the other stuff that he's doing, and some of the stuff that he's going to be doing in the DC Studios role, with I forget the name of the team, but it's like the other team that he's going to be
Authority, I think.
Authority. Yeah. The Authority.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Another one I've never heard of, but I'm sure it's going to be, similar to what he's done with Guardians of the Galaxy and all that. So yeah, I agree. This was definitely, for me, I mean, this was a Rocket Raccoon story.
Yes.
That did it justice. I love Rocket Raccoon, but I think for me, I always loved that character, but in this movie, I think I fell in love with the character even more, because you got to see him from a holistic perspective. Like, you didn't just see him from, the first movie, he was very, chaotic and funny. The second movie he was kind of the antagonist in terms of like, he was always, starting crap and stuff like that. This one was more of like, just you really empathize with him, and it gave just a kind of a good. Everyone thought he was going to die in this movie, right? Because it was you're getting his life story and everything, so everyone was
top of my list.
That. Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, this was just. I just never thought I would really enjoy a character as much as I did with Rocket Raccoon. Like, he was never been one of the characters when I think about the MCU that I just love. But like after this movie, I look back and realize like how much I actually love this character, and I didn't even realize it. It's like anytime he's on the screen, I'm like, yes, I love it in that moment, but I don't always think about how much I love the character. And I think with this movie, it really just kind of elevates it that much more to be more in my consciousness of great characters in the MCU. And I think this movie really does it even more justice and gives it a little bit more of a oomph moving forward, in that this is a character that can do a lot more with the MCU if they decide to use him in other movies and other team ups and stuff like that. But I think this one was just a really heartwarming story about this character that we all loved for a number of reasons, and then it just kind of brought it home with finding out his origin story, how painful was it. The fact that Nebula was like, this is worse than what Thanos did to me. You're just like, oh my God. Like that's just,
when she said that, I remember the whole crowd was like, oh my.
Yeah, exactly. Which I'm like, well, one, I don't think he would have shown anything, but it's just like, I think, kind of leaving it, not showing the specifics of like what actually happened to him and everything. I think just plays it a lot more, in that it is so disturbing and gruesome that you don't even want to see it, and so it's just
like that's what makes great horror movies. It's like, it's not necessarily the stuff you see, it's the stuff that you don't see. And this is a story that we've been wanting to hear about since some of his lines in the first Guardians, where like, I didn't ask to get made, and
right.
I didn't ask to get torn apart, put back together like some little monster,
right?
And like stuff from that and stuff from the Guardians 2, and like, I love this with a lot of characters in this movie. Nebula is another one, but the character development from movie to movie really, really shined through with Rocket.
Right.
And like, people loved him before. People were really into him over the years, like since he was first introduced. But I think this movie is going to make him like a true fan favorite for a number of years to come. And I mean, obviously, we've got to talk about the villain of this movie too.
Yes.
Because
are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Okay.
Got this next for 10. I think I was in the middle of saying he was just a terrifying, horrible monster that had to be stopped. And like, I mean, just an incredible story with the dichotomy between them, and getting Rocket's backstory and everything was just it was awesome, and I cannot say enough good things about it.
Yeah. The villain here is really interesting because there's a lot of the characteristics and motivation that is pretty similar to some of the other villains that we see as well. I think the disdain for human life, or I don't want to say disdain, but just complete disregard for not even just human life, but just life in general, of like how everything is disposable and all that. I don't think we really have that with other villains per se. I know that they have no problem eliminating life, without any hesitation whatsoever. But this one was just more of, just like didn't even think that it was worthy of consideration is the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like at least with the other villains, it's like they had to kind of rationalize it a little bit as to why they're doing that. Like this character was just like, don't even matter, don't even care, because this all goes to the higher power of what he's trying to achieve with his, perfection of society. And clearly, he's lost it, by the end when they tried to have a mutiny with him and all that. So the villains is very interesting in this. And I think it's really interesting to see the power play between him and Rocket when he created a being that ended up being smarter than him. Like, we saw with the scene where he figured out why the experiments were going wrong, and like he was still learning, he was still young. And the fact that the high evolutionary was really upset by that he figured it out before that Rocket figured it out before he did. Yeah. And so obviously he was like, I did something right, but you could tell that his ego is really bruised, really bad. in that moment as well. So,
Yeah, he had an ego, the living planet-sized ego.
yes, exactly. Oh my gosh, yeah.
I'm actually pretty proud of myself for thinking about that one like just right now. um,
Don't you love those moments?
right? You don't have them very often, but
right, yeah, yeah.
And then just like another thing that I just wanted to say too, like about the villain front, because Marvel's been so like up and down with the villains over the years. Like Marvel's proven they can do an incredible job with villains that like either you sympathize with or at least you understand where they're coming from, like the Thanoses of the world and the Killmongers of the world. But I do love when Marvel, brings a villain that you're just like, you instantly want him not only dead, but like suffering. Like,
yes,
they did that. They did that to an extent with like Green Goblin when he came back for No Way Home, and I
right.
loved what they did. I mean, Willem Dafoe brought that back to an incredible level, and
Yes.
and I kind of see the High Evolutionary as kind of one of those villains that like is just completely irredeemable right from the start, and there's nothing that changes that. I mean, and his performance, Chukwudi Iwuji, I mean, he gave a hell of a performance in this movie.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, we knew he was going to after what he did in Peacemaker, but he like automatically rose to one of the top MCU villains that we've ever had.
Agreed. Yeah, he's just done a phenomenal job in both of those well, I'm sorry, Peacemaker is a show. So in that show,
Right.
in this movie, I don't
Both
know if
universes.
yes, exactly. And I don't know if I've seen him in anything prior to Peacemaker. So I'm sure he's a phenomenal actor, outside of these two universes, but inside these universes, he's just done a great job, a great performance. And I think that, Guardians of the Galaxy just always have really interesting villains that they play with. And I think this is probably, one of the higher level of villains just in terms of storytelling, but performance. And then, if you think about it, it can affect the long term of MCU for quite some time as well, too, because that at some point, like one, we don't know if he's actually dead, right? Like they
Right.
left him for dead, but we know in the comics, no one's actually really dead.
And in
So
the MCU, nobody's ever really dead either. So
exactly, yes. And so there's every possibility that he might come back as a villain, even worse than in this movie. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities for them to either bring this character back or to continue on what was happening, what was exploring in this story with all the experiments that he was doing. Because I know, especially with them going for a more galactic cosmic approach with the MCU for these next couple of phases, I can see this kind of being another way of them exploring some of those cosmic phases of, the questions about ethics and morality, beyond what we see on Earth, but, kind of looking at how this would play through, different kinds of species and different galaxies that have different kinds of cultures and what those kinds of things mean as well, too. So there's a lot of opportunities for storytelling, for, philosophical questions, and just the fact that they could also bring him back as a, even worse villain than before. So, I want to talk a little bit about some of the fight scenes in this movie, because I got to say, the fight scenes were incredible. I love a lot of the fight scenes in the MCU. Shang-Chi is probably my favorite movie that has some phenomenal fight scenes, not just because of the stunt choreography and the fighting choreography, but what they were able to do with that kind of style to integrate it into a lot of poetic layers of that movie.
Yeah.
This one didn't have that sort of, it didn't have that sort of same parallel, but I was very impressed with some of the fight sequences. Most notably, one, I love the fact that someone had the idea of having Groot hide a bunch of guns inside himself and then have, I think 12 arms with the guns just kind of shooting around inside the spaceship of the High Evolutionary. So I thought that was just a genius, fun scene that they did with that. But the one shot scene that they had with the entire team in that corridor was phenomenal in a lot of different ways. One, like I said, I think if I recall correctly, I think it was almost all one shot, which this is not on the same level of Daredevil, because Daredevil was truly one shot in that they had to film everything one shot with all the stunts. So there was like a lot, that whole 7 minutes, they had to get all the choreography down. With this one, it looked like one shot. They probably filmed in a lot of different, places and a lot of different, film kind of stitched together because a lot of the visual effects and stuff like that. So they probably didn't record it all in one shot, but it's definitely a one shot scene. But the fighting choreography was just, fantastic. It was just so eye catching. James Gunn finds a way to get the most grotesque ways of people getting hurt without it doing permanent damage. I'm thinking of Nebula in this one, right? Where she gets her like neck pretty much snapped, but she's still fighting because she could just kind of reattach her neck because of how she's made. But I just remember that whole fight scene was just a phenomenal way of being able to just capture action in a very different way that we've seen before in a one-shot storytelling, but also just kind of pushes the boundaries on a lot of different things as well. And so it's definitely one of my favorite fight scenes now because of that, because I just remember watching, and I think I didn't even really move or anything because I was just so captivated by that scene. And I didn't know what your thoughts were for that scene, if you had the same kind of feeling, or if I'm like looking way into it.
No. I'm very much into that scene. I mean, doing a one shot in, pretty much anything is a tall order, whether it's, shooting it like the way Daredevil did. I remember they did a really good scene like that in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 2 also with I think Skye before she became Daisy.
Okay.
And then in this one was just insane the way they did it, especially because, like you said, there were so many special effects that were needed. I mean, Nebula getting her neck broken and put back together, Groot doing all of his arm stuff, Rocket jumping around. And it's funny, too, because you saw a lot of that in the previews. And, of course, it all looked like it was in the same place. But you had no idea that it was going to be a giant one-shot like that. And James Gunn did a great job with that. That's probably at least one of the top 2 or 3 Guardians fight scenes that we've seen in, I'd say, any of their solo movies or even Infinity War or Endgame, stuff like that. I mean, it was great.
And I think, outside of the team-up movie, so if we look at, just the individual movies in the MCU, this is also one of the top 3 fight scenes in the entire MCU so far, for a number of reasons. Again, because there's so many layers that went into this. It's not going to supersede Shang-Chi for me. I don't know if anything will, just because of the way they did that. But this is a really, really, really close second because of the way that they incorporated so much of humor, the fighting styles, the the stunts that they did was just phenomenal and so jaw dropping with some of the things that they were doing, and that they had all these different kinds of styles. So each character has their own fighting style. Like Rocket and Peter always doing the guns because that's their thing, right? Groot doing his Groot fighting style, whatever they call it. I don't know if it's like Groot Jitsu or whatever.
I would love to find out what that is.
Yeah, I hope it's called Groot Jitsu, because if it is,
I'll be
like, yes, I nailed it. Just out on the top of my head. And if they don't have a name for it, that's what they should call it. But they all have these different fighting styles, and they just really utilize that to not only focus in on those things, but some of the transitions and how they complemented each other while they're fighting as well too. It's just, again, just in terms of action scene and the stunt choreography and what they're able to achieve in that fight scene beyond just fighting and everything, I think it was just a phenomenal scene that they were able to shoot. Speaking of grotesque things that James Gunn did you notice that in the movie his wife was in it?
Yes.
And she was the one, I forget what her character's name is, but she was the one that has the little floating ball that's always communicating to people in the Orgo core or whatever they call it. And she gets shot in the leg. I feel like James Gunn just has a lot of fun of just trying to be sadistic as possible. I'm like, who's like, hey, I'm married to you, but I'm going to make sure that you get shot in the leg and get hurt and maimed and all that, right?
And not even just her, like Nathan Fillion was in that scene. Yeah. He's worked with James Gunn a lot. Yeah. Danielle Melchior from the Suicide Squad was what Ura, I think her name was.
Yeah.
And I know that some people are going to say oh, Gunn puts all his buddies in a movie. So is every director in the history of film.
I was about to say, that's not a new thing.
Exactly.
I'll be honest. I try not to dive into some of this stuff real quick, but it's that's really just a spillover from everything that's happened with the Snyder Bros and all that. And
for sure.
They're just looking for stuff, and I
Absolutely.
get I get some of the criticism, but like this one is just like, yeah, now you're just reaching for straws, and this is like nothing new in Hollywood,
Yeah,
So
for sure.
like try to go for something else, but this is not like I think it pretty much ended the same day it started. So because people
Yeah.
pointed out like how many directors have done this. This is not a new thing in Hollywood. So
Mhm.
yeah, but
Yeah,
I get that.
but yeah, that whole scene was great, and like when she first came up, like I felt like it was her, but then when she came up again, and that
Yeah.
was great. It was great seeing her in there, and all the gun buddies. We got like Linda Cardellini coming back as Lila the Otter. Got a fun little Scooby Doo reunion there. That was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Um, but no, and I mean it was great seeing all those different characters, all those actors there, and he did a great job with it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad that Nathan Fillion had a lot of time in this movie because he only showed up
Yeah,
in Suicide Squad that James Gunn did for like I think 5 minutes. And I was
yeah,
really bummed out because I love Nathan Fillion. I absolutely love a lot of the stuff that he's been in. And I think that this was just a really fun one for him to do, that he doesn't have to be like a huge character by any means, but I think this one he had enough screen time that I really loved it. And he was actually in Guardians of the Galaxy 1. He was the
yes,
voice
he
of
was.
one of the inmates in there. So I love the fact
Yeah,
that he came back, get to be himself a little bit more.
yeah, he was the one that Groot put his hand up his nose right when
Yeah.
they got to the kill, and that was great. I was just gonna say that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I love that. Well, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that, of some of the actors that has been in the MCU going to come back as voices of the other characters, because I think Lila was
Linda Cardellini, yeah,
thank you. Yeah, yeah. Who was I'm
Laura
forgetting her
Barton,
name.
yeah,
Yeah,
Laura
yeah.
Barton,
Laura Barton. Thank you very much. Yes. That's I was trying to remember. But
yeah,
yeah, Laura Barton. So
yeah, and Tara Strong was Mainframe, and she's also done Miss Minutes, so that was pretty cool to
yes.
see.
Yes. And I'm sure she'll probably do another. I would love to see her on screen sometime as
Me
a
too. That'd be fun.
yeah, as a character as well. But I'm sure they'll probably bring her back for like some other voices as well, because she's a phenomenal voice actress, and so she'll
Yeah,
be able to do a bunch of different voices they want her to.
and I think if I recall, Judy Greer from Ant-Man was, I think, War Pig, if I'm getting the name right.
I think so. Yes, yes,
Like this movie probably had more former or current MCU stars doing other roles than probably any other movie in MCU history. And it was great. Like it was really fun. There were all like minor roles and stuff, and it was a good time.
yeah. Oh, I agree. Um, Let me talk a little bit about how many connections there were in this movie with the holiday special that really surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's the obvious one. So if you did not watch the holiday special, you probably were thrown off by the fact that they said that Mantis and Peter were siblings,
Mm-hmm.
because that was never established until holiday special. And so if that was news to you, it's probably because you didn't watch holiday special, or you may have forgotten about it in the holiday special as well too. But that came up again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the reference to Kevin Bacon being kidnapped was in the newspaper in that end credit scene, which I
Yep.
absolutely love that they, brought that in and, kept
Me
it
too.
going. Oh my gosh. And that was genius how they did that for the
Yeah.
holiday specials. I absolutely loved that whole, episode that they did, because they just had a lot of fun with the stuff that they established early on, and then got to do these things like bring in Kevin Bacon to be part of the MCU now as himself.
Yeah.
Um, the other things that I don't know if people, noticed, but and I would have not have noticed this if I hadn't just watched Holiday Special like the night before I went to see the movie. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I noticed is that in the Holiday Special, I think it was towards the end, all the people are dancing, and somebody asked Drax, like, how come you're not dancing? And Drax is like, dancing's for the weak, I'm not weak, blah, blah, blah. Kind of gave his little Drax spiel about, how
Yeah.
inferior it is and everything. But at the end of this movie, when Mantis is leaving and everyone's kind of parting ways and everybody on Nowhere is dancing, Drax starts dancing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely love that, because Drax has always been kind of this, strong, dominant, masculine figure that is everything that you think about in terms of a, traditional masculine figure of like a male warrior and stuff like that. And for
Mm-hmm.
him to kind of have a 180 between what he said in the holiday special to one crying at the end, because it was always funny with his relationship with Mantis, because he always talks about like how she's ugly and all this stuff, and like really insults her a lot. And
Yeah.
then by the end of this movie, they have a great relationship, a great friendship. He is so sad that she's leaving. And the fact that he's, kind of embraced dancing, which he saw was inferior, I thought was really a really great way of kind of showing that character development. I don't know if I would have noticed that if I had not just watched the holiday special the night before, because I would have missed that. And I think there's a lot of those little things that are in this movie that probably points to something that was referred to in some of the previous movies as well, too.
Yeah. And I remember
just for that reason.
I remember the Drax dancing thing was also a big thing at the beginning of Guardians 2 when he was talking to Peter about his whole relationship with Gamora and everything. And he's like, I am a dancer. Gamora is not.
Oh,
and, and he's like, you just need to find someone who's pathetic like you. And then I remember mentioning the dance off to save the universe in Infinity War when he was with Tony and Peter and Doctor Strange and everything too. So that's definitely been a running thing for a long time. And I'm glad they addressed it. I mean, and that was great to see, like I was saying earlier, the character development for everybody in this movie, like the way they changed and evolved and everything. Seeing Drax dance was a pretty cool thing.
Oh yeah, definitely, I agree. So yeah, so there's a lot from the holiday special is in there, and this one is, and this one thing that I noticed, I'll say that this might be a little bit premature because I can't remember this happening in any other movies or appearances that this character has made, but at the end of this movie, I think we saw Nebula smile for the first time.
You know what? I could imagine that's if it's not the first time, probably one of the first, because you really don't see her smile, ever.
Yeah, right. Well, and she has shown a lot more emotion in this movie as well, too. So like all the way through Endgame, she was still pretty cold. Like she still got emotionally passionate when it came to her sister, when she had that, fight in that argument with her sister, because she was like, all I wanted was a sister in the second movie and everything. So she was definitely, passionate in that regard, but we never really saw her get emotional in any of the movies up until this one. And this one, we saw her, cry when she heard Rocket was alive. And then we see her smile, and it was just like, when I saw her smile, like, I think the reason why I noticed it is because I was like, wait, this is kind of odd. Like when she did that. And then I realized it's like, oh, it's because like I don't think I've ever seen her smile in any of the other movies. And so I think it's just really nice to kind of see her finally feel like she is out of that torturous state that she's always been in, from growing up with Gamora as her sister and Thanos as her father, and kind of having that, competitive, didactic relationship with her sister and being tortured by Thanos, to now, this is a family that she's really embraced, and she's, finally in a state of happiness instead of like a state of necessity, And so I absolutely love that. I don't know if I'm looking into this again and that it's like, maybe not. Maybe James Gunn's like, yeah, that's been the whole point. But at least that's what I took away from that is when that happened, was like, that's actually a really cool detail to put in, that it really just does volumes in terms of what we see with the character and what it means now for her to finally be happy with this family that she found.
Yeah, totally. And like Nebula was one of the arcs in this movie that I love more than almost anybody else, because especially the way she's grown since the first Guardians. Like I watched the first two Guardians over the few days leading up to this one, and seeing her change and grow and like be more willing to, be emotional and love people and have people in her life. I mean, especially with her and Rocket, because you saw how their bond grew during Endgame and everything, with them being the only two Guardians that were alive during the 5 years between Thanos snap and the Hulk snap and everything.
Right.
But no, James Gunn and everybody on this movie did such a good job. It's such an incredible job, really, with that kind of character development and evolution. And Nebula, especially. Nebula has turned into one of, I think, everybody's favorites. I mean, especially for me. And Karen Gillan's done such a good job with the role over the years, and it's a role that's had to change and evolve with almost every movie. I mean, like she's always been kind of that, like she's got the anger, she's got the stoicism and everything, but she added new layers and everything over these last couple of appearances, like at Thor: Love and Thunder and this and the holiday special. It's been really great to see.
Oh yeah, I agree completely. It's and all of them have that. Like, even talking about Gamora, how we have a new Gamora, and this is a completely different character than what we've seen in all the previous movies, right? Because this is one that came from the past and now is stuck in this future and doesn't have the same relationship or feelings as, she's just not the same person that we've saw from Guardians 1 all the way through. But I feel like Zoe Saldana did a great job of making Gamora, feel so much different than the previous ones. And the fact that we actually get to see that happen again, of her seeing this family and kind of falling in love with this family again, was really cool of a parallel of like, again, a nice way to kind of wrap things up of like a cyclical thing that happens with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and kind of seeing it through Gamora, I thought was a really cool way of telling that story.
Definitely. No, and that was great. Zoe Saldana did an incredible job too of, kind of reinventing the role. And I know she's not coming back really to play the role probably after this movie. And she got to have a lot of fun with it being this kind of new but old Gamora at the same time. And like her stuff with Peter and Nebula, that one scene that everybody saw in the previews with those three just turned out great. And and all their interactions were really, really fun to watch.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I agree. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we kind of give our final thoughts and rating for the movie and all that?
I think we got it just about covered. I mean, like I'll say it till the sun comes up that this movie was damn near perfect, and I love it, and I cannot wait to see it again. I'm going to be watching this one a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I'm definitely going to see it again with my family. I'm in the same boat. I don't think I can give this movie any lower than a 9, but I would give it like a 9.5 or 10 out of 10, just because this was just such a great movie, great story, great. Everything about it was great. Like you talk about the costume. Look, excuse me, I forgot the Orgoco costume, how grotesque that was,
Amazing.
just so like, it's like, wearing a skin on top of your skin. It was just, gave you that, so many feelings, right? So the costume design, just everything about this movie, I thought was just so well done. It's hard for me to really feel comfortable with giving it anything less than a 9 out of 10. I always feel like I have to do, there's always something could improve on and blah, blah, blah. But just like you, like, I just can't find it. Maybe after I watched the movie like a fifth time, that maybe I'm like, oh, there's that one thing that I think if this was a different color or something like that, right?
Totally.
But it's just a great, I'm with you. It's just a great movie, and I think it's going to be hard to top this one in so many levels.
Yeah, no, this one, I think for me it's a 10 out of 10. Honestly, there aren't many MCU movies that I give a 10 out of 10. Like the other ones I mentioned, No Way Home, Infinity War, maybe Endgame, like the Civil Wars, Winter Soldier, stuff like that. Guardians 3 is in that discussion, even though I did not think it was going. Like I said, I knew it was going to be good. Right. I didn't know it was going to be this good.
Yes.
It's going to be, like you said, really hard to top this one going forward. Even as the multiverse saga expands, and James Gunn went out with a bang, and I can't wait to see what he does at DC.
Agreed. Yeah, and it's a bummer because we all know that how Oscars and how critics feel about these kinds of films, and I feel like this is one of a handful of films. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever won a lot of awards, and rightfully so. I think a lot of movies could have won a lot of different awards, but I feel like this movie, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, could really be a great contender in the Oscars, but I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't get a lot of nominations from a lot of different things.
It should be an Oscar contender, but
I agree. Yeah, because from a story, when you look at it from a story perspective, it's a fantastic story. It just happens to be a group of superheroes, and I think that's what we all know. That's kind of what rubs people the wrong way when you're talking about Oscars and critics and all that. So,
for sure.
Well, that is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Before we get into the next segment of the episode, I do want to remind people that the Caption Live show is part of Comic Watch, which is a grassroots volunteer organization that brings a lot of news and reviews on comics, TV shows, films, anime, you name it, we probably cover it. and we're always looking for reviewers. So if you're interested in joining the team, I do have a link in the show notes below that you can go and click on the application and fill it out. Let us know that you're interested, and then somebody will get back with you within a week or so. We'll let you know and talk to you about, joining the team as a reviewer. So if you're interested in reviewing any of those things I mentioned, definitely, check out the application. Our episode next week, we're going to be celebrating our 100th episode of the Caption Live show, and we're going to have former co-host Kevin Stoliker to celebrate. And this is a first. We're going to do this live. And so we're going to record this Friday, May 12th. So this Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And we're going to be live on YouTube. So if you want to watch us live and kind of, flub it up even more as we do this live. But Kevin's going to be back on the show. He was, the co-host for a number of years and then had to, step away, but he still comes back on the show from time to time. So he's going to help me celebrate this week. So if you are interested in joining and watching the 100th episode, check out our website and our social media. We have all the information there. You can go to our YouTube channel and find the link there. We also are doing a 100th episode giveaway. So if you're interested in that, check out our website, and there is a page that you can click on. They'll give you all the information about what's in the giveaway and how you can enter. So with that being said, let's go to our next segment of the episode, and this is where we talk about the comics that we're currently reading this week. So before Rich and I talk about the comics we're reading, I like to start off with what people have shared with me what they're reading this week. And so from Comic Watch, we have our editor-in-chief Matt Meyer saying that he is currently reading Green Arrow by Mike Grell. He said that it's dated in some regards, but solid street-level superheroing that feels less super and more regular dude trying to do the right thing, which in my mind sounds a lot like Hawkeye, like the Matt Fraction, David Aja, Hollingsworth Hawkeye type of thing with the street level Archer. But that's really good to know. I'm always looking for, new stories to read, and this one sounds right up my alley. And then we have two from our Illuminacasters Discord channel. Joe Loves Comics said that yesterday I read Radiant Black number 24, and it was absolutely incredible. One of the most visually spectacular comics I've ever read. Excited for more and to read the rest of my polls from this week. And Kim from the ODPH podcast also said Radiant Black. He said that it got the 10 out of 10 grade from him last week. So good. He's catching up on the Phantom Road and Black Cloak from Image, embracing for the game changer of Amazing Spider-Man 25 this week. I'm not surprised by Radiant Black. I keep hearing what great series it is. So I know I got to check it out sometime. I was talking to you, Richard, and everybody, who's listening to the show knows that I just got stacks and stacks of comics I'm trying to get through. So I'm not trying to add more to my unread pile. But this is definitely one that once I get caught up, I want to go back and read this because I've heard nothing but great things. And the fact that I got two reviews this week of people saying that this is an absolutely incredible issue says volumes of that. So thank you all for sending in what you're currently reading. Richard, I know you and I had talked about you are actually not currently reading any comics right now. From the ones I just mentioned, Radiant Black, Green Arrow, or if there's a comic that you've heard of that's out there right now, is there any of those that kind of interest you or that you think that you might want to try to read at some point in the future?
Well, that Amazing Spider-Man one definitely sounds like a lot of fun. I mean, I'm into all things Spider-Man, really. Mm-hmm. It's so funny with me. Like I was talking to you about it before we started recording. I'm not much of a comic reader. Like I really haven't read a lot of comic books in my life, and I know I need to do that. Like there's a few on my list. Action's Hawkeye run. I've heard really great things about that. And, as much Spider-Man content as I can get. One of my personal favorite like comic character is Deadpool. I'm literally like sitting on a Deadpool
chair. That's awesome. Right now. That's a great chair. Yeah.
I love this thing. There's literally like 4 other Deadpools on this thing that you can find. and it's just great. So I want to get into some Deadpool comics. But yeah, no, like at some point I know I need to get to it, but I'm going to start reading some comics and it's going to be great. And I'm looking forward to it.
Speaking of Deadpool, there is a trade paperback I have. There's a couple of trade paperbacks of Deadpool that I have that I need to read. I've been wanting to read. One of them is Dead Pie. Sorry. One of them is Deadpool versus Hawkeye. And the reason why I got it is, one, I love Deadpool and I love Hawkeye, but the cover was just so amazingly hysterical because it's one of those like classic, two villains kind of going at each other at an angle. So not like, straight from left to right, but at an angle from like the top right to the bottom left at each other, almost like the, God touching Adam scene from the I forget the exact title of that painting, but from Michelangelo the Vatican. But what's funny
the
is
one that was just referenced in Guardians 3 with Adam Warlock and Peter.
I forgot about that. Yeah, that's exactly what it was, because you're just like, maybe that's like the one criticism I have. Like who goes out and just like touches the finger and then brings them in, right? But it was a great reference. I love that.
Whatever, it was great.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, like again, I had to find something, right?
Exactly.
But the thing about this cover that I absolutely love is that Hawkeye has his bow and arrow shooting directly at Deadpool. Deadpool also has a bow and arrow, but it's a Nerf bow and arrow, and you see a bunch of Nerf arrows. Yeah. And so just the cover alone, I'm like, I have to read this. I have to get it. I have to buy it. I have to read it. I haven't read it yet, but I love how comical Deadpool is. And speaking of, superhero movies, the series of Deadpool 1 and 2 has been my favorite. I think it's one of those top superhero well done movies as well too. I know that Guardians of the Galaxy, does a phenomenal job with the music, but Deadpool, gets pretty close to it. It's not as integrated with the narration, but it definitely elevates the story and hits you in the feels with the songs choices that they made with it as well. So I'm definitely excited for Deadpool 3 to come out. I know everybody was losing their minds when they said that Hugh Jackman is coming back as Wolverine. But if there's any, I would recommend just that alone for the cover. You should check that out.
I have said it so many times. Deadpool 3 is, I think, my most anticipated MCU movie coming out. Like even maybe above it. Kang Dynasty and Secret War. Like, I mean, see how much of a Deadpool fan I am, and getting Hugh Jackman back and getting the entire cast back. I cannot wait for that movie. I hope it's as good as we're expecting it to be.
Oh, I agree. Well, and all the people that they're bringing back from Deadpool, all the way from, I'm blanking her name, Vanessa, the actress who plays
Marina Baccarin.
Thank you. Yes, how she's coming back all the way through. Peter from Deadpool 2, the
amazing. I'm so happy he's coming back, and Blind Al.
Yes, like it just seems like they're bringing back almost everybody from the core people from Deadpool. It's just so I know everybody's just going to be really excited about that, and I think everybody's. I wouldn't be surprised if it sold out that opening night, because I think everybody is just.
Oh, I wouldn't be shocked at all. No.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, I'm going to have to stop, because I'll just go down that rabbit hole, and this will be a longer episode for that reason.
For sure.
Yeah. So the comics I'm reading this week. So there's two that I'm reading for Comic Watch to do reviews on this week, and I haven't had a chance to read them yet. But one of them is Batman Incorporated issue number 8. And I know that this is where we're going to get the introduction of Joker Incorporated, because I actually had the creators Ed Brisson and John Timms on the show, and they were talking about this on the episode. And so this is going to be the issue where we see Joker Incorporated, which is kind of like the opposite team of Batman Incorporated. So if you don't know much about this story, it's pretty much a Batman story without Batman in it. So if you want to have a Batman story, but with characters that you probably never read about before or new to you, this is a fantastic story. It's a team up comic book story. But it's very familiar because it has a lot of Batman themes and Batman parallels to it, but they're all brand new characters that you get to learn about and get to follow along. So I absolutely loving that. And then the other book I'm reviewing for Comic Watch is Stoneheart number 3 from Image Comics. It is written and illustrated by Emma Cooper, and I love the first 2 issues. It's very much a fantasy, kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons story. And I think she's done a fantastic job of telling the story with the use of her dialogue to the illustration and the colors and everything. She's been doing a great job with that. So I'm looking forward to reviewing that. The 4 comics I'm technically pulling 5th, but I'm going to explain why I'm saying I'm really pulling 4. The 4 I'm pulling this week that's coming out is Daredevil number 11, because I'm a huge Daredevil fan. So, I'm reading that. Rogue and Gambit number 3, which has been a fantastic story. I've always been kind of a casual fan of Rogue and Gambit, but this one is being written by Stephanie Phillips, and it's a fun story. It's really, it's everything that if you want just kind of like a exciting story, Rogue and Gambit is definitely one of those. I'm also reading Spider-Gwen Shadow Clones, which is very interesting. I will say that I haven't been a huge fan of the art. I feel like some of the art has not really landed for me, but the story was really interesting, and so I'm still pulling that. And then I'm also pulling Spider-Man 2099 Dark Genesis. So this is an interesting series because most series you get a new issue every month. This one is a 5-issue series, but it's a new issue every week. So they're doing it a little bit differently. I'm not sure why. I read the first issue last week. It was interesting. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great either. I think it's just kind of a setting up things. I'm definitely in it for Daredevil 2099 because he's going to be showing up next issue. So that's one of the reasons why I pulled it. And then the last issue that I'm technically pulling, but I'm not reading, is the Amazing Spider-Man issue number 25, but I'm getting the Disney variant. I don't know if you've been seeing this, Richard, or not. If you haven't, I'll send you pictures. Yeah, but they've been doing like, Disney characters as different Marvel characters. So this one is like
I love when they do stuff like that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I'll be honest, like I'm not reading the story. I'm just collecting the covers because I love the covers so much. I might frame them or something like that. And I know my son has been enjoying them as well. So I'm pulling it just to get the cover. I'm not reading the story at all whatsoever.
Right, yeah.
So those are the comics we're reading. And that wraps up this episode. Richard, thank you very much for coming on the show, talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. You have some great insights to all the movies that you review. And, this is, nothing short of that. You had some great insights. I had a great time talking to you about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Before I let you go, where can the listeners find you and your work online?
Well, thank you so much, Sean. I mean, I had an absolute blast. I already can't wait to see this movie again. You can find me online. I'm mostly on Twitter at Richard Nebens, Nebens. You can find me sharing all of my stuff there from the direct. And I'm also on Instagram, TikTok. I'm not really active much on there, but I'm going to try to be here soon. Same names, at Richard Nebens. And I write for the direct basically every day. You can find my stuff there. I've got a lot of stuff coming. A few months, couple of years, DC, Marvel, Star Wars, anything I can get my hands on, really. And I can't wait for all the movies that are going to come out in the next few weeks. Obviously we've got The Flash next month, and July's packed with regular normal movies, like Barbie, Mission Impossible, all that kind of stuff. And I'll be covering all of it. Can't wait for it.
Yeah, and we got Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse coming out in June.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah,
and probably the best movie of the summer. Yes,
I know everybody's for me. It's that, and surprisingly enough, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is coming out in August. And I say surprisingly,
for that one.
Yeah, because if you know me, you know that I am not a Seth Rogen fan, but the trailer convinced me that it's going to be a great movie. So I'm not a convert of all Seth Rogen stuff, but I am definitely a convert of this, and I think he's going to do a great job with that. So yeah, so a lot of great movies. If you're interested in following Richard and his work, I'll make sure to put those links in the show notes below. Again, thank you very much for coming on. And if there's ever another movie you want to come on and talk about and do the show again, you're more than happy to come back.
We will definitely be in touch. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much. It's been a blast.
And that wraps up another episode of The Caption Life. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. You can follow us on social media at Caption Life. For more information about us and all of our previous episodes, visit thecaptionlife.com.